Hey, what's up everyone? How's everyone feeling today? This is Mark Perry back at you with another video. In today's video, we're going to discuss about assignment of contracts, how do they work, and double close contracts and how does it work. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons on each one. And then what you can do is whenever you get a property under contract, how you can structure the deal whenever you're looking to sell that deal. So before we dive in, I'm super excited. I'm super excited about my second book that came out, Give Yourself a Second Chance. You know, and this book is on Amazon already, so you can definitely go check it out. But it's basically a concept of changing self-image and changing how you think and how you view things. And the more that you do that, you change the self-image of yourself. You become a different person. And in order for you to see different results, you have to become someone different. You have to start looking at life from a different perspective. And a lot of this self-image helps with that. So when you change the self-image, everything around you changes. So feel free to go check out the book. It's on EB right now. But without further ado, let's get started. So what's the difference between assignment of contract and a double close? Now, keep in mind that these two are a little bit different. Now, if you deal with title companies, a lot of title companies understand assignment of contracts. They understand, okay, you're going to sign the contract over to your buyer. You're giving your rights to that buyer. On the other hand, the double close, there's only a few title companies that understand this and how simultaneous closes work together. A lot of title companies don't know it, but there is some title companies and attorneys that understand double close. But we're going to go on double close in a moment. But the first thing we want to do is go into assignment of contracts and understand how this works. So what is assignment of contract? Assignment of contract is basically you're signing your rights over to sell this contract to that buyer that you have. So let's say if you had the property under contract with the seller. So you have the property under contract with the seller and the seller and you. And let's say, excuse my handwriting, but let's say the seller and you have it under contract with the seller, right? So you take the title, you take that contract and you take it to the title company. They'll check for liens and so forth on the contract and on the property. So they'll check for liens, and then what you do is you market the property. So you get pictures, you get photos in the inside and outside, and you put the numbers of, you know, what the ARV is, you know, how much you can rent it for, or how much you can fix it up for, or how much it's going to cost to rehab and so forth. So you just want to put all these numbers together. Put all these numbers together with photos, and then you market to your buyers. Now your buyers are going to be rehabbers or landlords, or they're going to be either creative financing buyers as well. So you want to be able to take this property and be able to market to your buyers. Once you have a buyer on board, you get earnest money down. So you'll want to make sure that you get some earnest money from the buyer, you know, and it can be 1% of the purchase price. So whatever the purchase price is of that property or that duplex or that apartment or whatever the purchase price is, you want to be able to get about 1% earnest money. So the buyer puts down earnest money. You send over the assignment of contract. So the assignment of contract goes to the buyer. The buyer sees the assignment of contract, they sign. The assignment of contract goes to the title company as well. So when the property closes, the title company knows, like, okay, they have to pay you that fee before the property closes because you're signing your rights over. So basically, you just turn that contract into assignment of contract to your buyer, and your buyer is going to pay you that fee. So let's say if you got it under contract with the seller for 100K, you got it under contract for the seller for 100K, and then you turn around and you assign it over for $120,000. What's the assignment fee? So the fee will be 20 grand, $20,000. So the $20,000 fee will go to you, and then the buyer will have the property once it closes. So that's how assignments work. So basically you want the spread. So you put it under contract with the seller, and then you take it to the title company. Make sure you make them check for liens and everything. So that's going to be maybe a week or so or two. Depends on how backed up the title company is. They'll check for liens and so forth. And in the meantime, as they're doing that, you want to market the property. So because you're going to wholesale it. So you want to market the property. So you market the property, you get a buyer on board. The buyer say, yes, I want this property for $120,000. Okay, great. You send the assignment fee over for $20,000. So basically your assignment fee will be $20,000. But you know, so let's say if you got on contract for 100, you sell it to them for 120, so that assignment fee should say 20 grand on there. So they'll see that $20,000 and they'll see what you're making. So they'll sign it, It's real quick. You don't have to pay any closing costs. The buyer pays for all the closing costs. They pay for all the fees. So that's the good thing about it. The good thing is that you don't have to pay any fees, and you'll get a flat $20,000 profit. So that's assignment of contracts. Now let's move over here to double closing. So what is a double closing? A double closing is basically you got a property under contract with the seller, and then you put another property under contract with the buyer. I'm sorry, you got the property under contract with the seller, and then you have the property under contract with the buyer. So basically you're using two of the same contracts. You're not using an assignment fee this time. So the assignment fee is not relevant to this. So basically you have it under contract. Let's say if you have it under contract, same scenario for 100K with the seller. So you got it under 100K with the seller. And then let's say if you sold, you got it under contract now with the buyer for $150,000. So you have it under contract with the seller, a normal standard commercial real estate or residential contract. You have it under contract for $100,000, and then you put another contract together. Once the buyer's on board, you put another contract together for $150,000. And you notice there's no assignment fee. So we're going to talk about that. So what you want to do is you want to take these contracts to the title company. So let's say if you don't have a buyer yet, you still want to do the same thing as the first one. Take that seller's contract to the title company, let them check for liens. Let them check for liens and everything, make sure the property is legit. This makes it get the process moving faster. So you take it to the title company, and then what you do is the same scenario as that one. You want to be able to market for the property. You want to be able to market for a buyer. You know what I'm saying? You want to be able to put, like I said, the pictures, videos, and so forth. You want to put the numbers in there. You market for the buyer. Let's say you get a buyer on board. Yes, I want this property. And you say, great. Okay, so I'm going to put another contract with that buyer for $150,000. Now, why did you do this? Why do you do a double closing besides assignment fee? Because I know you're thinking right now, well, Mark, you know, why not just do an assignment fee and it would be more simpler? Well, a lot of times you have to understand this, and this is the pros and cons of both of these. Assignment of contract, you don't have to pay any fees. Double close, you would have to pay a fee because you're basically, there's going to be two closings. There are going to be two open escrows. So on this one, there's only one open escrow, but with this one, there's going to be two. So somebody will have to pay that first closing cost, which will be you out of your fee, and then the buyer will pay the second closing cost. So there will be a fee involved, and so instead of you making $50,000, you'll probably make it depends on the deal, you might make $45,000. It could be $5,000 in closing costs, or it could be $3,000 in closing costs. So you'll be paying the closing costs. But the reason why you want to do a double close, and from my experience, a lot of times people get sensitive if you send them assignment fee and it says $50,000 on there, a lot of individuals get sensitive, a lot of buyers do, and they might want to negotiate that price with you because they feel like you're making too much money without doing anything. Some buyers are like that. Now it depends on what kind of buyer that you normally deal with. If you know your buyer really well and you have a great relationship with them, they might not mind it. They might be okay with paying you $50,000. But a lot of times they don't want to come out the pocket and pay $50,000. They want to use OPP, other people's money. They want to use other people's money, which is the bank's money. They want to use that to be able to fund the deal. So they might not have $50,000 out their pocket that they got to pay you. So a lot of times you want to do a double closing, and a lot of times with the double close, the banks will take care of the whole transaction. So let's say $150,000, the bank just sees this contract. They'll see this contract. They might ask for this first one, but they see this one, and then when it closes, the bank's going to fund the whole thing. So instead of that buyer coming out the pocket paying that $50,000, the bank just pays for the $50,000 at closing. So they'll pay the whole $150,000. You'll get $50,000 and the seller gets $100,000, and the buyer gets the deal and they walk away. But that's the key thing about it, guys, because when you're doing a double closing, no one knows what you're making. Not even the seller. The seller doesn't know what you're making, and the buyer doesn't know. They don't know you made up $50,000. But when you do an assignment, though, the seller and the buyer knows what you're making. So that's very key. They know what you're making. So if you're making $20,000, they know you're making $20,000 off their house. A lot of times if the seller's motivated, they really don't care what you're making. They just want to get their price and just be done with the property and move on. It can be sometimes with the buyers. The buyers might come and negotiate the price with you. They might go down on the price. You just never know until you go experience it. You have to experience it to see how your buyer is willing to work with it, because with these deals, you can make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 if you find the right deal. And the rule of thumb, from my experience, if you're making, I would say if you're making $20,000 20K, I don't think buyers will trip so much off $20,000. If you're making $20,000, 20K or less, if you're making 20K or less, you do assignment of contract. Now, if you're making 20K or more, you want to be able to do a double close. So that's my rule of thumb. You can do it however you want to do it, but 20K or less, I don't get too many buyers really worried about it, from my experience. But like I said, you just got to feel your buyer out to see, give it to them and just see what they say and what kind of feedback they come with. But if you're going to make $20,000 or less, I would say go with an assignment of contract. But if you're going to make 20K or more, I would say do a double close. It's well worth it if you do a double close if you're making like $25,000 or $30,000, because even if you got to pay $3,000 or $4,000 in closing costs, you still will walk away with like 21 grand, $22,000 in profits. So that's how this normally works. So let's recap back off this. So assignment of contracts, you're basically signing your rights over to that buyer for you to get a feed. That's what assignment is. Assignment of contract, you're signing your contract over to get a feed. And that's how you make your $20,000. The double closing is you're basically going to do 2 transactions at the same time at closing. So both of the closings will happen simultaneously at the same time. So let's say if you have a closing date on the 1st of May, that happens both at the same time. The bank funds in the whole thing, and you will have to come out your portion to pay for the first closing costs, and then the second closing cost will be the buyer's thing. Because keep in mind, you have a closing cost here, you have a closing cost here, closing here, and then you have a closing here. So what that means is when you got both closings, you have an escrow open here and you have an escrow open here. Someone will have to pay that, so that normally comes out your fee to pay for that closing cost. And then there's another closing cost, and then the buyer pays for this closing cost. I hope that makes sense. So double closing, they won't know what you're making. So if you're making $40,000, $50,000, they won't know that. You just have to come out the profit a little bit for closing. And assignments, they will definitely know what you're making. So I hope that this video helps. Also, if you're already new to this channel, please like and subscribe. Hit that little notification button for more content that I'm going to be putting out and share more information with you about real estate, how you can get involved in real estate and so forth. But remember, both of these things are pretty easy. You just got to find a little bit more digging for someone that understands the double closing, because most people don't do double closings, but there's people out there that understand it, like title companies and attorneys that's going to do your double closing. That's just a little bit more digging, but there's people out there that can do it. Assignments, normally any title company, any attorney can do it. They understand assignment of contracts. You can wrap your mind around that really easy. But just make sure whatever fits best for you. And you can do this anywhere nationwide besides Illinois. But even with Illinois, there's still other ways and techniques and strategies you still can use, like transactional funding to purchase the property and then turn around and resell it. Because in Illinois, you can't really do any of this no more. You'll get fined for it. So all the other states are great. You can do this nationwide. And I hope this video helps. And I'll talk to you guys soon. And I'll see you on the other side. Thank you.